Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one starfish or one person at a time. I am really excited to spend some time with our guest today. Angela and I met each other at an Arte event. Of course, her name's Angela. We're friends instantly. Angela and Angela. So she's a certified profit first consultant, which is really cool because I just read the book, so I know what that means, and it's amazing. She runs a couple restaurants. She's looking at opening her third location. She's also a wife, a mother, pet owner, friend, all of those kind of things, coach. Welcome to the show, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's so good to see you and see your beautiful face in person.
I love it. So tell us a little bit, what started you down the road of, I don't know where you want to go, the restaurant, the profit first, what did you do before that?
It's funny. I've been in the restaurant business now for 6 years, and I was in commercial HVAC before that, running for a business segment for a large corporate company. And I just decided I wanted to go out on my own. And so I bought into the famous Toastery franchise, which is based out of Charlotte. And I opened my first location 6 years ago with just a plan of opening that location, running it until I found a staff for it. And then I was going to go off into the sunset and do something with my lifetime. And I ended up opening a second location of it. I'm currently looking for a third location. And COVID brought me into the whole of starting business coaching because I had so many friends that were having issues with running their business during the pandemic. And so that kind of morphed into something by itself. And I found Profit First about that time. And I love it. So I felt like I needed to learn more so I could help other people implement it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things that you found, I guess we can dig into wherever you want to go with that you found that helps people be profitable in a shortened form? Obviously, like I said, we're going to have links, reach out to Angela if you have some questions afterwards and stuff. But what are some things that were helpful, especially in the COVID times? And I think people are still in some of those times in different countries for sure.
Yeah.
And more than others, but I think still affecting everyone everywhere. So what are some things that you found that helped you be profitable as a restaurant business, which is one of the hardest businesses to actually be profitable in, from what I hear, and helping others?
So it's great because one of the things that Profit First teaches you is just to have the financial mindset of preparing for what could happen at some point in time. I think a lot of people go into business and they think about all the great things that are going to come from their business, and they try to achieve those things. And then when they aren't able to achieve those things, they end up saying, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do? I'm not making any money. I'm not able to pay my people. I can't pay myself. And they operate their business without keeping themselves in mind. And so when I found Profit First, I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't I find this when I opened the restaurants? Because one of the things that I love about Profit First that it teaches you is you're not going to miss 1% of your money. If you do nothing else, take 1% of your revenue and put it in a bank account so that you have it for later for the things that could potentially happen. And obviously there's a lot more to Profit First than that, but that if I'd had that 6 years ago when I opened my restaurants, I would have financially been in a much different place when the pandemic hit. So figuring out how to structure so that you can pay yourself as the business owner, so that you recognize that you do have a value to the business you should be paying yourself for, is one of the things in Profit First that I could have benefited from. I didn't pay myself for the first 2 years that I was in business. I was a volunteer in my company. I was not the owner. I was not an employee. I was a volunteer.
Right.
Volunteer like 120 days a week for about 2 years in my business. And so I would have learned a lot differently had I found that book, 6 years ago. But so I'm very passionate about helping entrepreneurs understand their value to their business and in their own business, and how to pay yourself and make sure that you're taking care of employee number one. Because if there is no employee number one, then there's no business. And so that's one of the things about Profit First. I think it's really important to learn and to understand. But the other piece of it too is that your financial position in your life and with your business is all based off of your mindset. And we all learn that mindset when we're young. We learn it from watching our parents deal with finances. We learn it from watching our mentors deal with finances, and understanding what your own personal value is financially is key to where your business is ultimately going to go from a financial picture too. So I learned all of that like in the last year and a half, and I wish 44 years ago I would have known it all.
Oh man, that's so good. And so what are some things that you had for mindset, maybe, I don't know if problems is the right word, wrong thinking, and how are some ways that you reshifted your mindset on those things that have helped you?
So it's interesting because I've made so many mistakes with money in my life. And so learning from those is very humbling, right? I think one of the main things for me was I always lived above my means because I never worried about having another dollar come in. I started working at a young age. I babysat. When I was in third grade, I sold candy that my mom used to pull from shelves because she was a merchandising rep, and I got her in a lot of trouble. But I used to do that. Like I had all the things, and I always had money. I always had money I was bringing in. So it was like, if I wanted something, if I wanted to go on a trip, if I wanted to do something, if I wanted to go somewhere, I didn't budget for it because I always had money coming in. So I never worried about having money come in. And that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I made, because I never planned for tomorrow. I just spent what I wanted for today without thinking ahead. So that's definitely one of the things that I had to shift in my own mindset with my business, because when you open a restaurant, to your point earlier, you don't make a lot of money. You're not super profitable. You might, if you're a really good restaurant, you might make 8 to 10% profit a year. And so essentially what happens is that 8 to 10% goes away really fast. When you have a little bit of labor overage, changes in cost of goods, all of those things. And so I had this mindset of, don't worry, the money's going to always be there. The customer's always going to walk through the front door. So I wasn't preparing for things like the pandemic. And so I had to shift my mindset. And that happened very recently, like 2 years ago. And so that was a big thing for me from a financial perspective. I just never worried about money. I just always thought it would be there. And then, oops, no more dining rooms, no more ability to function. I mean, fortunately, I was able to shift the business model to carry out, and we never closed. And we literally cooked food and delivered food to people's front doorsteps just to have revenue coming in. And people would come to their door. They would look at us, they would wave through the door, right? Nobody was wanting to breathe on anybody else. So we have masks on, we have gloves on, we have all the things on. We're dropping these people's hot food on their front doorstep for breakfast. And they're in their bathrobes, waving at us through the front door. That was such a surreal experience. But it was then that I was like, why didn't I prepare? Why didn't I budget? Why didn't I mean, nobody can prepare for a pandemic, right? None of us had ever been there. No. But I sure could have done more preparation up to that, for sure.
So explain a little bit, because I read the book, so this is good. Explain a little bit about the 1% that you were talking about and how that kind of works.
So essentially, the goal of the whole book is to shift your mindset on what you're doing to prepare for the worst. And in most cases, we all have too many expenses. We spend too much in our business without realizing what we're spending it on. If we have money coming through the door, we're checkbook accounting, right? You got money coming in, you can give money back out. I can hire people, I can do the things that I haven't necessarily planned for. So that taking 1% of your revenue out of your business and putting it in a bank account labeled profit, when you don't know what your profit is, at least makes you save that money. And then you can accumulate it and utilize it for something you may need later on. Or you can reward yourself for the fact that you have actually saved that money, at some point in time. But it's just a small start. It's just if you've got to start somewhere, it's a small start. The book itself, though, is much broader and does a much better job of setting up different bank accounts to cover your expenses, or to cover your payroll, or to cover your taxes, so that in a tax season, you're not writing a check for $10,000 wondering where you're going to get that money from. It does a really good job of you allocating money ahead of time, so that you don't have those surprises that you have to compete with later on.
That's so good. And like you said, I think this is for not just businesses, but really for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Just putting aside 1% and then slowly upping it till you have more and more. But we always live paycheck to, well, I shouldn't say we always live paycheck to paycheck. A lot of the world lives paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. Whether it's $1,500 a month, whether it's 10,000, whether it's 100,000, paycheck to paycheck is paycheck to paycheck. And just getting in that habit of savings is, it's a very good start there. What are some things that you see as a vision for where you're going and what you want to do with the restaurant, with Profit First, with, what is Angela's life? Where do you want to go in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think probably one of the things that I have found in the last couple of years is that my purpose here is to help people, just help people in general. We all, life is hard. It's not easy. It's financially hard. It's personally hard. It's can be a challenge, get things thrown at you from a health perspective or from a family perspective that you don't know how to deal with. And so for me, I do things that I know that I'm helping people. So it's interesting because with my, coaching clientele, I have a client who started with me on cash flow management a year ago. I instituted Profit First with him. He was in a habit of using his line of credit to help him make payroll because he wasn't really managing his money very well. And so we started really small with him and he started putting that 1% away. And then we started with, let's set up a payroll account so that you can allocate a certain percentage to make sure you have money for payroll. So we've gotten him off of the crutch of needing his line of credit. And we had a meeting a couple of months ago and I said, okay, well, you can now, if you want to allocate some of that 1% that you've been saving for yourself, you can utilize that, and it's profit. You can take it as pay for yourself. And he said, I've been saving all this money. I don't want to spend it now. I want to keep saving it and see how far I can get. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've helped him. Right. I've helped him change his mindset. I have employees at the restaurant. Loudoun County is where I live is one of the richest counties in the country. It's the highest median income in the United States. And we have people here that can't afford to eat. We have people that can't afford to live. The county itself appears to be very prosperous and robust. It's like this little secret of people that can't afford to actually live here. We have a huge problem with teenagers being homeless, things that don't get talked about right on the news. And so I feel like it's in my helping people, I feel like that's part of my responsibility is to help people with the housing piece of it. So one of the things that I'm starting to do for me looking forward is putting together a nonprofit foundation that actually provides housing stipends to people who are in the unskilled labor wages in Loudoun County to help them find a place to live and then be able to afford it with a small stipend for a period of time. So for me, looking forward in my life with the restaurants allow me a vehicle to help those employees with their lives and help them with personal growth. And then on top of that, creating this new layer of it to help people in the county to be able to have a roof over their head and not have to worry about where they're going to sleep tomorrow and how much it costs to stay there or having to move. I mean, there are families where people just have to leave. Because they can't afford it and the cost of housing is not getting any better. It's just getting worse. So that's what my life looks like, at least for the foreseeable future anyway. How long that lasts, I don't know, but that's my goal.
Your goal right now. That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. And did that come from, you obviously in personal development, that's where we met kind of in those spaces. Yeah. So have you always been into that, or has that been more of a recent shift too, than like say last 5 to 10 years, or has it been longer?
No, that is 100% a recent shift. So I had found myself very kind of complacent, I guess, and sort of unhappy. I've always been a person who's always looking to do more. And when I started my own business, my goal at that point in time was to get it to the point where I didn't have a job for myself. So I started the original restaurant. I wanted to manage it myself, 7 days a week, until I found a manager I could hire, train, and start developing. And once I had done that, I was so lost. I didn't know what else to do. Like I didn't know what the next steps for me were. I didn't know what was going to make me happy. And I really kind of withdrew into myself. And actually I had a friend of mine that I met around that time who introduced me to Andy. And I started listening to the podcasts from the Real AF and podcasts from the MF CEO. and I went and did 75 hard. And so that really started my personal development journey, my own. And I realized I haven't been happy because I was meant to do more. And I was just existing in what I knew, you know? So for me, it's probably only been about 2 years since I started that whole process. But man, my life has changed a lot in in 2 years. Yeah.
That's so cool. So I don't know how to word this question. You hear a lot of people and they're like, man, I'm comfortable. Things are okay. Things are good. But you touched on something that I think is very important, that you weren't reaching your full potential. And how do you think that affects people when they, aren't reaching their full potential and aren't really maxing out their life?
I feel like it leads you to some level of unhappiness, but you don't know why it's there. I mean, for me, when I went through that period of time in my life, I felt like it was a professional thing. This was prior to buying the restaurants. I was kind of having that feeling in my corporate life as well, where I was like, I just need change. I just need change. I just need change. And I was very unhappy, and I wasn't I wasn't who I am for the people around me. I was snappy with my kids. I was snappy with my husband. I was just kind of miserable in general, although I was very successful, right? I had a very successful career. I was making a lot of money. I had, a family from the outside, people looking in the window, they'd be like, oh my God, they have an amazing life. They're very much in love and all of the things. And, but I was miserable and I was unhappy. I felt lonely. And so I feel like if you're not reaching your potential, or if you're not doing what you're meant to do, that you're going to have those feelings, but you don't know why. And I didn't know why. Then when I started the restaurant, I thought that was the answer. And I was like, no, that wasn't the answer, right? I set goals for myself. I made it to those goals. And then again, I started feeling that whole like lonely and empty and not feeling right. And, I feel like when you have that feeling and you can't explain why you're not happy, because you should be so happy with all the things you have, it means you need another step. You need another goal. You need another thing to reach out for, whether it be, just your own personal side of things. If you feel like you're not doing things for yourself, there's something else out there you just have to keep searching for, because we're all meant to be happy. So if you're not, there's something you got to work on,
That's interesting. And when you started down that path, because I'm not sure, I'm just curious, when you started down that path, did you reach a lot of roadblocks that tried to stop you from growing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the hardest part of personal growth is that you will leave people behind in your life. There are people that come into your life for a short period of time. They're only meant to be there for a short period of time, but you don't know that. And then there's people who come into your life that are to be there for your whole life. But the hardest part about change within yourself is you're going to start seeing the triggers in other people that you don't want to be a part of anymore. So I think one of the things for me that I found that was really challenging is it was within my own family. Like I had family members who really were a part of the negativity in my life, and who really, even though it wasn't negative direct toward me, the way they handle life was very negative. And I had to literally put boundaries around that and remove myself from their lives. And those are people that I love dearly, that I have to not communicate with at the same level I used to. And I think that was one of the hardest parts of the personal change for me, was the relationships that you end up having to kind of leave behind or mourn to some degree, so that you can continue to move on.
Yeah, and that's really good, because a lot of people say that, like, I don't want to leave people out. I don't want to cut people out. Now I've heard that for me, I know I just kind of outgrew it. It wasn't like we're not friends anymore. It was just like, what do we got to talk about? Kind of just quit talking because there was nothing to talk about. Was there a degree in your life where you had to like say, hey, we can't be friends? Or was it basically the same? You just really distanced yourself and started to like just do your thing, and it was what it was?
Yeah, I think I one of the things that I was not good at for a lot of years was just creating boundaries to understand how to let people in and out of your life. So I haven't said to anyone that I just can't with you anymore, right? Yeah, I haven't done any of that. In fact, I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, and she had noticed that there was distance, obviously, between us, and that frustrated her. And I just had to sit down and explain to her, this is why there is distance there, and our relationship is what it's going to be. You know, we're still, I love her. We've been friends for 20 some years, and we're just in different places in our life, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And so that was a really hard conversation to have, but I'm not a believer in saying, no, I can't with you at all. Right. But I can with you, but just know that it's not going to be maybe to the same level of depth it was before. You know, every relationship is individual, and sometimes you work through relationships like that. And my husband is the same way. We went through a period of time where I was on this growth trajectory and he wasn't growing at all. And our relationship went through a lot of strain because of that. And I sat down and had a conversation with him. Hey, look, these are all the things that I'm working on and doing for myself and where I want my life to go. And I want you to be there with me. But at the same time, you have to also kind of work on things a little bit too. You know, so I'm a communicator. I believe in communication. I'm an over communicator, probably.
Sounds like you're doing good.
I don't know if I'm doing good. I'm just doing, right. We all have the tools we have, and we have to use them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, relationships are hard, but you have to do what makes sense for you and for where you are and what helps keep you in the right trajectory. So
and then your husband kind of started to step up, and some people will.
He did. Yeah, he did. And some people will. And then it becomes great, because these people you thought you weren't going to be able to bring with you, then all of a sudden see your growth. And sometimes they get inspired by that. And then it makes them think about their own life and their own trajectory and where they want to be. And then all of a sudden they're growing right there alongside you. And you didn't have to leave them behind, you know?
Right. Oh man, that's so good. And then did you consciously, I mean, obviously in Arte, was that a conscious, like, okay, now that I'm like, we're separating from some friends, did you consciously go, okay, now I'm going to consciously make new friends, and here's what I'm looking for?
So no, I do like everything off of gut feel. I know it's kind of crazy. But I found Andy, then I did 75 hard. Then I learned about Arte, and I was like, one of the things that I am missing locally in my county is somebody that is like right there, like inspiring me and pushing me. I have friends and I have mentors in the restaurant business in my county, and I have some of them who I look up to and talk to about things. But holistically, as a human being, I didn't have anyone that was as into personal development, and also had their own business, and also, you know, was health conscious and all of the things. So when I learned about Arte, I was like, oh my gosh, I could join a group of people where we all feel this way. Wouldn't that be amazing? And it would add so much energy to my life. And so that's why I decided to do it. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a goal. I just said, well, what the hell? I need people around me who have all these things too. So let me see if what it's all about. And I'm so glad I did it. My life has totally changed. It's been amazing to meet people like you. I had breakfast this morning with another local Arte guy. There's a Long Island meetup on Sunday I'm going to go to see some of those.
Oh man, I want to be there.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm going to come to Canada. I'm going to come visit Canada too. Yeah. So I wasn't looking for it, but man, I'm so glad it fell in my lap.
That's so cool. So if you had someone that was like, maybe they're younger even, let's go. I don't know how many of our listeners are young yet, but hopefully we got some young listeners that will listen to this that are just getting going. What are some things that you would give them for tips? If they're like, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to run a business, and I don't know anything about really personal development or growth or associations or anything. What are some tips that you would give them?
So I actually ironically have a couple of kids, I call them kids, starting out in their businesses. One is a lash technician who has her own business installing lashes. Another one is a personal trainer. And I have a third one that is a TikTok food influencer. And I started with the personal trainer, and then she recommended me out to her friends. And they're all under the age of 22, and they're all starting out their businesses. And I've sat down and talked with all of them about 1%. and about being cognizant of not wasting your money and how to set your businesses up and how to do all of those things. And we talk about don't ever not look at the things you want to do in life. Always think about yourself. Their parents are still very much influential in their lives. I have one of them, their parents are super supportive. I have another one whose parents are not supportive at all. And so that becomes a completely different conversation because they're still trying to figure out how to grow their own sea legs without their parents being around. But I do tell them, look, just go for it, jump in. If I had known the things that I know today at 44, if I would have known those things at 21, I may never have worked for somebody else. I may have started my own entrepreneurial career back then, but I think I was afraid, So I tell them all the time, don't be afraid. Don't lose sight of who you are and what energizes you and makes you happy. And also make sure you set your business up right.
That's cool. And then what about the ones that say, like, because it's something I always hear, they're like, I want to get a business, but then they start kind of building it and they're like, man, this is hard. This is tough. They're running their job, which pays their bills, and then they're running their side hustle. And they're like, this is tough. How can you explain to them how it's worth it?
I just ask them what they ultimately want in life. And most of them say, I just want to be in charge of my own life. They've come out of being with their parents, they're come out of being in school, they've been on someone else's structure and schedule and all of that. And so I just talk to them, if that's the case, and you want freedom, like this is the way to get freedom. But getting there is not easy. It is hard work and it takes a lot of effort. And fortunately, most of them kind of have that understanding. And I haven't had any of them come to me and say, well, I'm kind of ready to give up. They're all still very much, going forward in their own businesses. But I do have other clients that are starting out their entrepreneurial life. So they may not be in their early 20s, but they just got into their own business and they're in their early to mid 30s. And, they'll talk to me all the time about they didn't realize how much work it took. They didn't realize how much effort it was. And all I can do is share my own experience with them and say, hey, look, I was working 7 days a week, 120 hours a week in the restaurant on the floor with employees. Today, I travel all over the place and I still have my restaurants and I still have my employees. I develop them. So while you're in the moment, while you're in the present and you feel like you're going to die, because I did for like 2 years, I'm still alive. I'm still alive. It was really hard, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. If you create that for yourself, you just have to keep pushing, and keep going and find people out there who are going through the same things you're going through so that you have a network of people that you can talk to and that you feel like you can relate to, because a lot of your friends are not going to be able to relate to you.
Yeah. Why don't you come hang out? Why don't you? I remember when I started, same thing. I was like, hey, why don't you come to the lake? Hey, we have a barbecue. And now it's like, oh, where are you? Oh, you're on the ocean. So you give up the lake for an ocean.
Yes.
That's kind of how I look at it. Like you give up little things for something big.
Yeah.
You give up your, I don't know. I like my Volkswagens. I'm not going to say that for a Ferrari, but concepts there. I like my Volkswagen. Probably better than a Ferrari, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about how can I deal with the delayed gratification? Because the delayed gratification is so much better than tomorrow's gratification. So it is, it's all about sacrificing now, because the ultimate goal is that freedom and ability to do what you want later. So,
right. And you just never know. So that's really cool. I love this. I think there's just a lot of gold. Like I said, reach out to Angela. We'll have her bio, her links, all that stuff in the show notes. But before we wrap up, I have 3 questions that I always love to ask. Okay. And then anything you finally want to leave with our listeners. So first question is, someone's looking for their purpose. A lot of people are like, man, it's like we're a culture of find your purpose. So we want to find your purpose. What's one sentence you would say that might help them?
What makes you happy?
And I hear this a lot. If you guys listen to my podcast, you guys like pay attention. Something about that. That's cool. What makes you happy? Number 2, and you might have more than one, but what comes to mind right now? What's your favorite quote and why?
We can never get time back. And that's why, because we can't get it back. So use it wisely, value yourself, value your time, value all of that, because we never get time back. Yeah.
That's a good one. And number 3 is, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
One word or sentence I want.
What do you want to be remembered by?
She lived for others.
Love this. This is giving me ideas of what I want on mine, by the way. So appreciate that. So it's actually changed. It's really, really fun. So in wrapping up, like I said, so say you run into someone at the coffee shop and they're like, man, I listened to the podcast. That was incredible. But like, what's one thing that maybe we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for an aspiring entrepreneur? I don't care what age, or someone that is in the thick of it and hustling or whatever. What's one thing that maybe we didn't touch on that you think would be really important for them to know?
I think one thing would be important for them to know is life is always hard. So just don't ever give up. Just don't ever give up. Keep fighting, you know.
I like that. That's awesome. Yeah. As always, listeners, make sure to rate, watchers, whatever, rate, review, share, tag us on Instagram, all of that kind of good stuff. Because if we can work together, we can change one life or one starfish at a time, and together we can change the world. Thank you so much for being on, Angela. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.